And no, I'm not trying to get you to watch this whole video in its entirety just for time sake, but there's a lot of points that I make. You know, there's a lot of people that disagree, or no, it's you know, you're what you're looking at is not correct, and that's fine. Everybody has their own opinion, but I've been working on this long enough to where I've dealt with a lot of the issues that a lot of people haven't, even if they've worked on them, for 15, 20 years. Fuel issues on the New Age Mustang, which also pertains to other vehicles as well, because similar issues can happen on other cars as far as fueling problems. First thing you need to do, and on most systems, they have what's called a Schrader valve, and you can get access to your fuel rail, like right here. And a very good diagnostic tool is a fuel pressure gauge. This end right here threads into where your Schrader valve goes. I happen to have a fuel pressure gauge on my car because I used to run nitrous and I didn't want to grenade my engine if I lost fuel pressure, but these are great. You can take the fuel pressure out of the system after you're done checking the fuel pressure. Generally with the new New Edge cars and the fuel injected cars, around 35 psi, and it should be running a little over 40 to 45 under load, which is getting it under load is fairly difficult unless you're actually driving the car. But don't let a fuel pressure gauge fool you. Just because the fuel pressure is good doesn't mean the fuel pump is giving you enough flow. So you need to keep that in mind as well. This used to be an old hack, kind of a drag racer's hack, but do not go into your fuel pump cartridge and take that one-way valve out to get better fuel flow. You will have all kinds of drivability problems if you do not have that one-way valve in your fuel pump. Fuel injectors. Fuel injectors is a big issue on these cars. They either never go bad or they go catastrophically bad. And another little, what I would call, pro tip with fuel injectors: make sure you line them all up to where they're parallel, the plugs are straight, they're all lined up, so you'll get the exact spray pattern in every cylinder. That's just to make it consistent. Whether that works or not, I don't know, but it's just something to think about. Make sure you grease up your plugs well, and if it's got any miles on it, the plugs, besides the passenger side, which have them take the intake off, the fuel injectors are not that difficult to take out, and I would suggest taking them out and cleaning them. There's another company that I used in the past, and they're called Accurate Fuel Injector Cleaner and Restoration, and that's who I sent my injectors out initially to, and they can get your fuel injectors within less than like 1% of each other, which will eliminate you from having to buy a whole new set of fuel injectors. Or if you get a new set of fuel injectors, I would suggest sending them off and have them flow matched. When I first sent my fuel injectors off, believe it or not, he called me up and said there was a tiny beetle in one of the fuel strainers, because they actually have filters in the fuel injectors. In these, there's a little strainer in there that keeps bigger stuff from going in there and locking your fuel injector wide open. And as far as really bad things with fuel injectors and why you need to stay on your fuel injectors, my best friend, he had a 2000 model Mustang, and his fuel injector stuck wide open. We didn't know this. I should have figured it out when it blew the top of the spark plug off of it. I thought it was a spark plug issue, but the spark plug unscrewed the half of it and came out. So went to go put a new spark plug in it, went to go cranking it up. Well, unfortunately, the fuel injector was stuck wide open, and it flooded the intake. It filled up the cylinder, and it bent a rod. So yes, it's possible for a fuel injector to hydrolock your engine. So you need to make sure, if your car isn't wanting to crank right up there, make sure your intake doesn't smell like fuel. If it pops the top of your spark plug off, you need to make sure that fuel injector isn't bad. And with these cars being as old as what they are, send your injectors off and have them flow matched, and they'll come back like they're brand new. Because like in my other video, these fuel injectors, even though they say they don't support over about 300 horsepower, that's not really true. Because if you get a good tuner with cams, and my whole setup is pretty much as much bolt-ons as you can put on it. I've got as much power you can get naturally aspirated that you can get out of a Mustang, short of maybe tweaking, finding somebody with the golden tune that I could get some more power out of it. There's just no more power you can get out of it, and my injectors are more than adequate, the 19 pounders. So there's no reason to buy 24-pound injectors and put on these with another meter and spend all that money, $500, $600, $700 that can go into a supercharger kit that probably comes with injectors and another mass air meter. So don't waste your money on that. Fuel pump issues, fuel system issues. Okay, now not all fuel pumps or the lines or fuel filters are galvanized, but if you let these cars sit up and it's got a galvanized fuel filter in it, the alcohol actually turns to a gel when it comes in contact with galvanized metal. That's why you don't want these to sit up, or you want to go 100% fuel if you can. And I'm not really confident in seafoam and all these other additives that say this will help it for ethanol gas. I don't really, but I've put multiple pumps on this car because of bad fuel. And another, I call this pro tip, if you're going to, let's say, tail the dragon, I know your car may need maybe set up for 93 octane, but do not go to a small mom and pop gas station and fill up with premium or even 89. Take a couple of cans of octane booster, which generally octane booster, it changes the fuel, and yes, it can put some deposits on your plugs, but it's safer to go with regular fuel from like a small mom and pop gas station, like if you're going to the tail of dragon in the mountains, than to go and fill up with premium, which they may get one fill up for premium every 6 months, and the tanks are bad, nobody uses them. Happened to me, filled up at a small gas station, and I almost didn't make it back home. The fuel was so bad. I put 2 filters in it, and I knew the pump was bad. Whenever the car gets to where it won't run because there's so much junk that's gone through the fuel filter, you've probably got about maybe a couple of weeks before the pump completely goes. So you might as well just completely pull the pump out. If you pull that filter out and it's nothing but mud coming out, the strainer's probably clogged up and the pump is probably just about gone, and it's worth not having a $300 tow bill to just get a new pump, drop the tank, make sure you get an O-ring for the tank. They are not reusable. They're never the same for the fill-up neck. And also, if your car is lowered and you've got an aftermarket rear end differential, and for some reason you've bottomed out the car hard, you need to check your evap lines out at your gas tank. I got an evap code, couldn't find it. I'm usually fairly good at troubleshooting, so if I have to take it to Ford, when I would pull a vehicle and they would just shake their head and be like, this is going to take a while, and it's like, yeah, because I couldn't figure it out. I'm not saying I'm a professional mechanic, but if I can't figure out what's wrong with it and I take it to them, it's worth it paying the $137 for the diagnostic to figure out where the leak is coming from. Evap stuff is very hard to find. A lot of times your evap leak is your gas cap. If you have an older car, go to Ford, get a gas cap. They're, the locking ones, yes, they're nice, but they don't seal as well, and there's an anti-siphoning mechanism inside of your filler neck. If you've ever dropped the tank, nobody's going to siphon your fuel out of your tank of your Mustang unless you've got a spiteful ex that wants to put something in your gas tank. And people just don't do that anymore like they used to. So go and get a good Ford gas cap, because they're vented properly, and they may even want your vent so you can get the proper fuel cap, because the returnless fuel system is a whole lot more sensitive than the previous 98 generation a returnless fuel system in the pre-98. So, but you still need a cap. The caps do go bad. They do cause venting problems. My personal preference for fuel generally is top tier fuel. If you're daily driving it, and if you do not need to run premium in these cars unless you have it tuned for premium. If you're driving the summertime and it starts to spark knock a little bit or spark rattle, then yes, you can step up to 89. But you don't have to put premium in these cars unless it's been tuned for premium. If the timing isn't advanced, then you don't need to run higher octane fuel. You're really wasting your money. And my rule of thumb with running premium fuel is, if you're running a turbocharger, and like with the EcoBoost, for example, my wife's EcoBoost, it says you can run regular, which in the wintertime I'll run regular or 89, no problem in cold temperatures. But once it starts to heat up a little bit, especially if it gets over, and these are my numbers, these aren't something that I've looked up, these are just my personal preference. If it feels hot outside, and you have, if you have something with a turbo, you need to be running premium in it, even if it says that you can run 89. My Dodge pickup truck, summertime, well, I run 89 in it now all the time. Oh, and the previous generation Mustangs, the 98s and before, for some reason they like to run lean, and generally that's from a dirty mass air meter. A good friend of mine, he had a 95 model, no, not a 95, he had a 96 model Mustang with 4.6, and it kept running lean. He put fuel injectors on it. He did all kinds of work. He was a diesel mechanic, and he knows how bad fuel problems are from just being a diesel mechanic. Running lean is bad. And he finally, we told him, says, hey, why don't you clean your mass air meter, see if that helps. And that was a problem. It was a dirty mass air meter. And if you have a K&N air filter, I'm not saying toss it, but if you can go with an aftermarket high flow cleanable air filter that doesn't require oil, that's what I would suggest. On the later model, I believe it's the Romeo engines, some of the mass air meters actually have a heater on it. And yes, you can go to the K&N website and they'll dispute it. But if you over oil the air filter and the oil gets on that sensor, it's going to mess it up. There's a reason why Ford will not warranty parts, and they'll fight you. Like with EcoBoost, they do not want to say K&N air filter on that car. You better throw a Ford, and they just keep a Ford filter at the house. If you have a car that's under warranty, throw a factory filter right back in it and take it if you're having problems, and reset the battery and all that stuff. Make sure it's not the air filter that's causing the problem. And this has to do with air and fuel. An ASC mechanic has that certification for a reason, and they've spent so much time being trained and taught how to work on vehicles, all the modern fuel injection to the old fuel injection. Some of them won't even work on some of the older stuff, because unless they have a computer to plug into it, they won't even touch it. But that doesn't mean that they're a bad mechanic. Just remember, there's a big difference between a mechanic and a hot rodder. A tuner shop, yes, they can put a turbocharger in your car and tune it and get it to run 1,000 horsepower, but they're not necessarily a mechanic. There has been simple issues like the idle issue that I explained with the tail lights that tuner shops have been fighting with these new edges for years, wondering why they can't get the idle right, why it's wanting to buck whenever it's in gear. And a Ford mechanic would know about the LED taillight issues. So just remember, just because your tuner can't fix it doesn't mean that an ASC certified mechanic can't go in there and say, hey, this is the problem, this is an Evap problem. Evap stuff, they have a little sniffer. They can go around your car. Yes, it's going to cost you like $137, but they can find out exactly what's wrong with the Evap stuff. That's what I do. I get the part, I go home, and I replace it. If it's something that's, that I can't figure out what's wrong with it. Fuel pump driver. Where's the fuel pump driver? A lot of people wonder where the fuel pump driver is, and it is in the trunk on the driver's side, right behind here. You pull the covers off and the fuel pump driver's in there. It kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. It's a little card computer looking, it almost looks like a little hard drive, and it's just bolted right up inside of inside the car. If you're letting your fuel pumps, usually your drivers go bad and your fuel rail sensors go bad, and make sure you get Ford ones. Make sure you take them your vent. There's multiple different ones for your car, and if you don't get the right one, it's not gonna drive properly. And more than likely, Ford has an updated fuel pump driver or fuel rail sensor. They may not even offer them now. I don't know. I've replaced all this stuff in the past, and I haven't had to put parts on it in a long time. Cross fingers. But usually, running a bad pump for a long time, not changing out filters, having your pump run too hard, makes your fuel pump driver work too hard. It makes your fuel rail sensor go haywire and have to work too much, and that's the reason why usually they go bad, is not replacing your fuel filters. There's no reason for you not to get up underneath your car after every oil change and replace your fuel filter. Yes, it can be a pain in the butt because of the little special quick release fittings, but replace your fuel filter often. And with all this ethanol fuel, it's worth replacing that filter more often than not. And plus, we're looking at performance, so if you want to think about it as a performance thing, replace your filter. And if you can stay away from, if it looks gold color, stick with a high quality filter, a Wix, a Ford filter. Yes, the Motorcraft ones are a little more expensive, but you can get them, you should be able to get them through Amazon a lot cheaper than going to Ford. And also, as far as the part numbers, if you get the part number for something from Ford and go to Amazon and type it in, sometimes they'll have that exact part number that they crossed for you, made sure your VIN number was correct and all that for the part, and it's a whole lot cheaper on Amazon. So make sure you check on Amazon for that part number, have them print it out and tell them, let me see how much it is, and if you don't need it right then, try to find it on Amazon, that part that you need, and save yourself some money. And yes, fuel is can be a very complicated subject on these, but you need to make sure that you just know that, I probably haven't told you everything. I've said quite a bit, all that I could think of off the top of my head for fuel systems. So it's up to you, if you need to take it to someone else. If you don't know what you're doing and you think you're going to mess it up, take it, at least take it to Ford and have them do a diagnosis. Rent a U-Haul trailer, take it there so you'll save money on a tow bill. Some Ford dealerships, they'll come and pick it up for free. So that's what I would suggest. If you're really kind of clueless about what's going on, have them figure out what's going on with it. You can either have them fix it or take it back home and get with the parts and fix it. Alright, and in conclusion, make sure whenever you're replacing your fuel pump, you can go to either a boat place or online and get fuel line that is fuel injection and alcohol safe for that little piece of rubber line that goes in your fuel pump housing. I've seen a lot of fuel pumps now, they all come as a cartridge unit. You just drop the whole cartridge in, but if you're just replacing just the pump, make sure you use fuel injection line at the least. There was one guy who posted on a Facebook site, he had regular fuel line and wondered how in the world it blew out. Is because he didn't have fuel injection rated fuel line on his fuel pump. So, and generally it's gray, the stuff that's good for alcohol and gasoline, but make sure it's good for alcohol and it's fuel injection line, so you don't have to worry about it blowing out on you or rotting inside of the tank.